can we know what the crown jewel is without knowing what the crown jewel is? Weird question, right? But in this case, the answer is yes. What if I told you the crown jewel already featured in One Piece since even before the time skip? In fact, multiple times. Now, that said, we have never seen it before, only have we ever heard about it. So without further ado, sub to the channel to help us solve more One Piece mysteries, and let's get into this. The pirate crown jewel was alluded to have been taken from Hachinosu and brought to God Valley. The retrieval of the pirate crown jewel happens to occur right as the God Valley Hunger Games is about to take place, meaning two seemingly unrelated events coincided to result in the God Valley incident. I say seemingly because I doubt very much it's a coincidence, but I'll cover that towards the end, so make sure to stick around till then. There's potentially much deeper connections to this pirate crown jewel from the flashbacks we see throughout the story. Carmel talked about retiring after one final score to Cypher Pole. Xebec was previously said to go to God Valley for one big score also. But let's jump straight into the treasure itself. The crown jewel is most likely John's treasure. John actually states this explicitly in the panel which depicts the Rocks crew in 1096. It could be that Roger inadvertently took the Celestial Dragon's crown jewel, the descendant of the Celestial Dragon champion Garling, Shanks, after the pirate crown jewel was switched with the baby Shanks. We saw Shanks as a baby in a treasure chest taken by the Roger crew, much to their own surprise, during Volume 4 Billion. This reflects the chest we saw with Gaimon as well, with one literally containing Gaimon himself. When you think about why someone would put a baby into a treasure chest, there is only one real reasonable theory that would explain it. Shanks was put there to be hidden. Oda is not going to have a baby Shanks put in there as some dark form of revenge or because that's an appropriate way to transport a child. Shanks was put in there to survive, and in doing so I think it's fair to assume this is when the crown jewel was displaced from wherever it was originally kept. Makes sense that you'd hide a baby in the most protected or hidden place on an island, which is no doubt where you'd hide something like the pirate's crown jewel also. So it's not much of a reach to think the two were switched. John's treasure has yet to be discovered, and it's possible the fact that John had it but went unnoticed is because it may not have been found where it was originally kept, as would be the case if Shanks had been swapped with it. Instead, if anyone saw Roger take the chest that had Shanks inside, they may have mistaken it for the pirate crown jewel for the same reason, making Roger the target of the world government and leaving John to get away with the treasure undetected. Well, potentially up until his crew discovered its true nature and disposed of him. When Luffy notices Captain John's treasure finder, which leads to his hidden treasure, he snatches it up immediately saying, "I'm keeping it." This could mean that the reincarnation of Joy Boy and future Pirate King instinctively and without thinking took the treasure finder that takes him directly to the pirate's crown jewel. On the other hand, however, Nami allows Luffy to take the armband because there's no gems on it, making her think it has no value. Also, Usopp replies, "I wouldn't take that if I were you," and he starts to shiver. I haven't got much to say about this Usopp line, but we all know that Usopp lines have always been a little bit sus. Luffy goes on to trade the treasure finder with Buggy, in exchange for Buggy showing him the way out of Impel Down to freedom, which is a parallel to what the treasure finder does. This will come into play later. The treasure was said to be hidden under a Skull Island. What is spicy about this is that we know the crown jewel was at Hachinosu, a Skull Island. Similarly to Marijois with the Straw Hat, the treasure may have been kept underground, reminiscent of the description of John's treasure. Now, the question is Buggy's information current, or is it outdated, since the crown jewel left Hachinosu? Knowing Oda, it'll probably work both ways around, meaning that the jewel is no longer at Hachinosu, but instead beneath a different Skull Island now. Now, we do have Onigashima. It was recently flying around Wano and being blasted with a load of holes, making it seem unlikely. However, what is interesting is if it is on Onigashima, it could give more context to why Kaido wanted to pick it up and plop it on the flower capital. Maybe he thought it would wake Pluton or tie to the Joy Boy prophecy somehow. Alternatively, it could have been returned to Hachinosu after the God Valley incident. Some additional information about Hachinosu that might come into play later is what we see with another so-called incident that happens here, the Rocky Port incident, which is where Kobe became the hero of the Marines by freeing prisoners there, much like we see during the God Valley flashback. It was also said to be around the time Blackbeard overthrew Ochku, another Rocks pirate who was at the God Valley incident. So Rocks pirates Xebec, Kaido, Ochku and Blackbeard have all sat on the throne at Hachinosu. Throughout this time, hanging around has been Higurashi, an extremely knowledgeable and potentially conniving character shown to manipulate the events of history, heavily mirroring Carmel. Kureha also fits the old hag or witch theme these two play, which leads me to my next point. But if you do want more on the connections between the three old hags, check out my previous videos on Kureha and also Big Mum. Okay, so this is where things get a lot bigger in scope and potentially tie into someone pulling strings to affect the events of the world. I mentioned Higurashi, Kureha and Carmel, all of whom have mysteriously deep knowledge about devil fruits, will and world secrets. So ask yourself, why did someone steal the pirate crown jewel? GARP specifically said it should be expected for pirates to chase after it, so it might be that it's been taken intentionally to draw the pirates to God Valley. Now, who would want to put the Marines, pirates and celestial dragons in one place? This is something I'll be covering in an upcoming video, but I guarantee not everything at God Valley is as it seems. Powers above even GARP may be at play. After all, the island is called God Valley, right? Now, if you've got any ideas as to what really was going on behind the scenes at God Valley, feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments, and if they line up to what I'm saying or if they contrast what I'm saying, I'll try add them in that video. Whatever John's treasure is, it looks like it's the reason Xebec went to God Valley. It might be what Carmel wanted too, that one big score. Carmel specialized in child trafficking, so alternatively, Carmel's one big score could be Shanks, which would be the celestial crown jewel. What's interesting about this is the parallels to Marineford, as Whitebeard went there to essentially save a child, and there's a ton of parallels between the God Valley incident and Marineford. So we do have an older video on that though, so I won't touch too much on it now. Buggy seems set on getting this treasure also, tying him to the crown jewel. Funnily enough, we see an interesting tie between Carmel and Buggy when Buggy returns from looking for John's treasure and talks about a witch fattening up children before eating them. Oh, and by the way, the chapter just so happens to be called The Highest Powers of the World. Another nod to the God Valley incident there too. Back to what the pirate crown jewel actually is though. I believe the clue is in the name. Crowns represent royalty. Pirates' crowns represent pirate royalty. The only true pirate royalty we know is the Pirate King. And what do kings wear? Crowns. So, within the name you can see Oda being a master swordsmith, and it's possible that again he fools us readers by hiding the answer right under our noses. This would explain Buggy's interest in the treasure, as Oda could have Luffy discover Laugh-Tale and become the true Pirate King, but Buggy finds the Pirate King crown, making him a pseudo-Pirate King. Funnily enough, as I was writing this script and closing it up, Buggy's new TCG card dropped, and look what just happens to be in the foreground, a crown. Right, well, if that isn't a sign from Goda, I don't know what it is. So on that note, I think I'm all done there. If you like that theory, make sure to drop a comment below, particularly if I've gone wrong in any places. Correct me, feel free. But otherwise, I'm going to jump straight into the next one. Now it's time to discuss the GARP and Xebec connection. Ever notice the crazy connections between the two? The next theory is probably the spiciest of the three and still leaves my head aching to this day. Did you know Oda mentioned GARP might have an alter ego in SBS 59? GARP's scar disappears no less than 25 times throughout the story. Mistake by Oda? Not a chance. So, do GARP and Xebec share some will or destiny in some strange way? Sounds crazy, but here's all the evidence we've found over the past year and some change. And if you decide for yourself what the connection is, please let us know in the comments. And of course, subscribe if you'd be so kind. Now, jumping straight into it, we have some very basic ties which I'll cover briefly before diving deeper. Unlike almost every other character in the series, GARP has two laughs, not one. Very suspicious, as we know laughs are distinct to every person in One Piece and expresses some part of their character. The only character with two laughs other than GARP is Mihawk. Additionally, we first see GARP with Morgans, a marine turned pirate, perhaps Oda cheekily reflecting GARP's transformation from pirate to marine. This is definitely a weird one, as we know the cover stories often foreshadow future events, and let's not forget GARP's face was initially hidden by a dog mask during this time. Furthermore, GARP was a pirate in Romance Dawn, and obviously Xebec is a pirate. You could argue GARP has a pirate nature as well as a member of Sword, which is effectively a marine that's free to do as they please, or as it's also called in the One Piece world, a pirate. In level 5 of Impel Down, we see this unfortunate Xebec looking dude who's completely frozen. GARP was just frozen at Hachinosu, meaning one was frozen on marine grounds and the other on pirate territory. If there is a connection between the two, I wonder if this is why Oda didn't include Blackbeard at the Battle of Hachinosu, but that's just food for thought. In the anime, Garp overheard Sabo, Ace, and Luffy boasting of their dreams to become pirates, leaving him infuriated. Garp then chases them out into the night, breaking down trees and rocks and beating them to a pulp. Sabo exclaimed he was a monster. Afterwards, he casually leaves them, saying he will not be so merciful next time, which all sounds like it would fit the description we got of Xebec from Sengoku. He also described the Rocks pirates as a crew that bred the next 3 Yonkos, so Xebec has great talent as an instructor, much like Garp the mentor. We often see his mouth wide open laughing, reminiscent of the shadows of Xebec we've seen. Now, the more I look at this one, the more it makes me think. Rock looks a lot like Dragon, going by the silhouette, and of course Dragon is related to Garp. According to 1096, Xebec's crew treats their captain very similar to the way the Straw Hats treat Luffy, sort of shouting and barking at him, which again is another member of the monkey family. It's a strange connection for sure, and it looks like we'll get a full Rock's face reveal pretty soon. I'm of course referring to the God Valley incident we're currently seeing in the manga, which leads us to one of the biggest connections between Garp and Rocks altogether. No one could stop Rocks in the Marines except for Monkey D. Garp. Why? Could he really be that powerful that Roger and his entire crew was not enough? And it's only through Garp's sacrifice that Kobe became the hero of the Marines, alluding to the idea that Xebec may have sacrificed himself for the greater good at God Valley, which was then credited to Garp as the hero. Okay, so this might sound like a reach to some people, but if you've looked into a lot of characters, you'll know certain attributes of theirs will line up with other characters to give us hints, particularly Zoro, Kuina, Toshigi, stuff like this. So it's interesting because with Garp, his height is given as 9'5", and Xebec was introduced in chapter 957 and episode 958. Seemingly intentional considering how similar, like how close that chapter and episode is apart. One small other detail is Xebec is the name of a ship with an outstretched bow, and pre-time skip a character explicitly points out, look at this ship's huge bow, when pointing at Garp's ship. So, what can all these ties mean? Why would Oda intentionally not draw Garp's scar in so many panels? Whatever you think the answer is, drop your predictions in the comments below. Either way though, it's looking like we'll find out soon. Kuba the Red Sea is a big proponent of the fact that Garp is Xebec, just like Adam Jimrikai thinks also. It's not something that I was keen to think about at first, but the more I've seen the connections, the harder it is to ignore. There's clearly a very, very intrinsic connection between the two, one that's probably not been foreshadowed explicitly in the story, or not that at least I could find, so I'm very interested to see how this one resolves. Now, before we finish, we have one more theory for you, and this one packs a lot of juice. Since the reveal of the special Buccaneer race, the community has been booming with theories about who might be related to whom. During the Egghead arc, we've been shown 3 distinct places during flashbacks. These are Ohara, God Valley, and the Sorbet Kingdom. What's interesting about this is Egghead is in the South Blue, and Ohara is in the West Blue. We're currently in the South Blue and heading to the West Blue. The Sorbet flashbacks were tied to the God Valley incident, which is also stated to be in the West Blue. So, is this foreshadowing or is it just coincidence? Well, it's most likely just the thematic progression, as we, the reader, and the Straw Hats are all going to the West Blue. The Ohara flashbacks highlighted some characters we haven't seen in a while, bringing their stories to the forefront and making them relevant again. We see this in the other flashbacks too, but there is one example some might have missed. Kong. He was only shown in a couple panels, but we discovered he played a major part in the Celestial Dragons going to God Valley. As I mentioned earlier though, this flashback was connected to Sorbet. So the question is Kong from Sorbet? It may seem arbitrary, like a silly question, but there's a reason why this is actually pretty important. His recent conversation with Garp was his second appearance in the story officially, and yet he sits in a position so high within the Marines that even Sengoku calls him Sir. From the conversation with Garp, we can gather that both Marines knew about what the Pirate Crown Jewel was, and Kong appears to be in charge of security, potentially security that were involved in taking the Pirate Crown Jewel. Like many characters we feature on this channel, there's not much to go off when we first look at Kong. particularly as he's only had 2 chapters so far to do his thing, as I say. But digging a little deeper, we can discover some secrets about the history of Kong, and maybe even some clues to what will happen with him relatively soon. Let's start by going over the basic connections, and I'll reveal the reason this will play an important role towards the end, so make sure to stick around for that. Here's some residents of the South Blue and Sorbet Kingdom. Notice any pattern. They all have longer chins with beards that resemble spikes pointing upwards. As you can see, there's plenty of examples of this, and it even fits my boy Frankie, who I believe to be connected to Sorbet. Check out the video for more on that though if you haven't seen it already. Anyway, Kong has the same style going on here, and his build matches a lot of candidates for buccaneers. He also has a tattoo on his arm like many of the others. The tattoo might be a nod to the green blood band worn by the seraphim in their arms. In one of the only panels we have of him, we see this interesting symbol in the manga only, which resembles a similar symbol to the one that can be found on the church at Sorbet. This church and Kuma's backstory ties as buccaneers to the Nika family. The Nika fruit is heavily tied to the number 56, as we know. Interestingly, Kong has ties to the number 59, primarily through his birthday being May the 9th, 59, and his debut chapter being 594. Kong then reappeared in 1096, just one chapter off 1095, which would have given us another 59. This was also 502 chapters after his first appearance, which is only just a tiny bit over 500. Considering Oda's affinity for number play, I imagine these were intended to line up at some point in some way, but instead got scrapped to give something else priority. Or maybe I'm just not smart enough to figure out what Oda's done with it there. But if you understand it, then please let me know in the comments. One possibility though is it is an inversion of GARP, who is also tied to the number 56. The fact his name is Kong does suggest some monkey vibes going on. As I say though, you let me know what you think about that. Kong has 2 main characters he's tied to from his brief appearance so far, Sengoku and GARP. Sengoku and GARP notably joined the Marines the same year alongside Suru. These are the only 4 people in the Navy whose hair is grey, notifying their age or maybe suggesting their generation. I bring this up because GARP is from the East Blue, Suru from the North Blue, and Sengoku from the South Blue, leaving one more C, the West Blue. The reason why this is interesting is because Kong being tied to Sorbet in the South and also in the West Blue through God Valley would fit well alongside what we've seen already, by which I mean the flashbacks involving both, as I say, Sorbet and God Valley, and again with Egghead and O'Hara. Okay, so there's enough connections there to raise an eyebrow, but if this was the case, then why would it even matter? Well, and GARP are the only 2 characters to be born on May the 9th. Both are seemingly from the South Blue. Sengoku is strangely absent, as I said, from the O'Hara incident and the God Valley incident, suggesting there's more we've yet to find out about Sengoku's backstory. I believe this backstory could be coming soon, alongside Kong's. In fact, maybe even sooner than we thought, considering, as I say, we are going to the West Blue, and Sengoku must have some sort of tie to the West Blue, hence his absence. The fact that we're heading from the South Blue to the West Blue may mean even that Sengoku versus Kong is happening. A little extra speculation I think might tie into this is the retrieval of GARP, with which Suru could come back into the story also. We know GARP, Sengoku and Suru all joined the Marines the same year, and they all seem to have ties to Kong except for Suru. There's a lot more to this theory to be unpacked, so consider this just a taster before we drop a bigger video on the topic and get into thoughts about stuff like Jozu being Kong's son. Jozu was born in the West Blue after all. Anyways, thanks for sticking through all 3 theories, and make sure to comment which one was your favourite. Shout outs to the whole TLA crew and anybody who worked on this. We've got a lot more coming, particularly with the Sorbet Kingdom and other residents. People like Big Mum, as I say, Jozu. I'm sure you've heard about Whitebeard. Mr. Bushido will be added a bit to that. As I say, the TLA group will be Haagen-Dazs, blah blah blah, the whole crew, Elson. If you have made it this far, you've just won 3 Galaxy Impacts. Let me know where you want them dropped in the comments. Love life, be nice to animals, and I'm gone.